She was small enough to disappear into a pile of black trash bags, a bundled shadow with frost on her lashes, a breath you could miss if you weren't listening. Snow fell with a hush thick enough to soften sirens, and yet the sight of her cut through him like a siren's blade. On Christmas Eve, under the gleam of his own name writ in lights 2 blocks away, Adrian Vale, master of acquisitions and losses he never touched, stepped into an alley and froze. Before we begin, if this kind of story speaks to your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from. It's always beautiful to see how far stories like this can travel. Enjoy the story. The alley behind the bakery smelled faintly of oranges and yeast. The world beyond it glittered and chimed, the charity gala, the rooftop carolers, a carousel of champagne. Adrian's driver idled at the curb, waiting in the warm hum of the town car. A cluster of photographers had already peeled off to chase a minor celebrity. For one merciful second, nobody saw Adrian step out of the sheen of the season into the thin breath of winter and kneel beside a child sleeping on trash. She was wrapped in a too-thin jacket, sleeves darkened by wet snow. A knit hat, once white, flopped over her brow with a red reindeer nose gone gray. She had tucked her hands into the coat's lining, one hole wider than a plum. He could see the barely there fog of her exhale. "Hey," he said gently. The word felt foreign, small, too much and not enough. He'd stood in rooms where a single nod made fortunes pivot, where one syllable could end 100 jobs with a sterile mercy. He had not said hey with his whole chest in a long time. He touched her shoulder. She twitched hard and shrank, eyes snapping open dark, lucid, and then wincing at the cold air. She clutched a plastic unicorn with one ear missing, pressed it against her ribs like a talisman. "Don't take me," she whispered. Her voice rasped, a winter bird's cry. "Mama's coming back," she said when the bells ring 3 times. 3 muffled peals drifted in from the cathedral downtown. He swallowed. "Are you waiting in this alley?" he asked, ridiculous for how obvious it sounded. The girl nodded. "The bags are warm." Only then did he notice the thin ribbon of steam rising from one bag, bakery waste, still giving off ghost heat. The child had found the warmest place in a merciless proportion. Adrian shrugged out of his cashmere coat. It was reflex, not virtue. He wrapped it around her too small body with awkward hands that trembled. His fingers brushed her wrist, cold but not the stone cold of panic. "Louis," he called over his shoulder, "get the car." "I can't go," she said, panic flaring. "If I'm not here, Mama won't know." "What's your name?" he asked. She considered, her eyes flitting from his face to the street. She was long practiced at reading the angles of menace in strangers, but he had the good face, the kind that could afford good moisturizers and the time to sleep. There was nothing for her to trust besides the fact that he had just given up warmth for her. "Mira," she said finally. "Like mirror, Mama says I see too much." "Mira," he repeated. A blue and white ribbon snagged beneath her, shiny, crinkled. Gold letters ran repeat down it, Vale Foundation, Winter Gala. The ribbon coiled in his hand like a snake, and he felt it bite. He got her into the car. There was no elegance to the act. He ushered her across the wet curb, coaxed her into leather that hissed against her frozen jeans, and leaned across her to buckle the belt she stared at like a contraption from a spaceship. "Hot chocolate," he told the driver. "And something warm." "Mr. Vale." Louis's eyes slid toward the gala, toward the lies of light reflecting off the marble. They had a script for nights like this. It did not include this alley. The board doesn't own the night," Adrian said. Even to his ears it sounded like a question. At the diner, one of the last stainless steel rockets in a city that had polished away too much chrome, the waitress set a chipped mug in front of Mira. Steam spiraled up, melting the ice on her lashes. "Careful," Adrian said when she lifted it too fast. "I know," she said, tilting the rim to blow. Manners lifted from some other life by some other hands. She took a cautious sip, and the way her eyes went soft in relief made his throat sting. He ordered soup and grilled cheese. She wrinkled her nose at the carrots floating like little suns. "You don't like carrots?" he asked, "if they're hiding in soup." She glanced sideways, testing for indulgence. The smallest tease of humor threaded through, like the first note from a recorder in grade school, wavering but brave. "What about grilled cheese?" She nodded, solemn as a judge. He almost smiled. "Do you know where your mom went?" he asked. "We can wait there." "Mama said the bells ring 3 times, the sugar sleeps. Stay with sugar." She pointed at the window where a soft drift powdered the sill. That means the bakery. She had to find cough stuff for me. She tugged at her scarf and coughed harshly as if to prove it. Did she say when she'd be back? She shook her head, then looked at him with intensity. She said not to talk to men with shiny coats. He looked down at the coat now draped over the back of the booth, snow melting across the cashmere in patterns like spider silk. Your mother is very smart. She is. Mira sat straighter, as if the name itself was a pronouncement. She makes things out of everything. We made a Christmas star out of receipts. He didn't ask the next questions he wanted to. Where do you sleep? Where's your home? What happens when Mama can't make it back? Because he did not know the answers in himself yet. He looked out past the neon of the diner's clock, which told a noon hour forever at midnight, and into his reflection. His face was a clean arrangement of angles and pale. In the glass, he saw a second reflection, further back, a high chair with a bowl of mashed banana, a rubber spoon balanced on the rim. That was a memory. He frowned at it, and it vanished. He tried not to think about tiny socks, about nights laced with monitors and beeps. He trained his mind to circumvent those rooms. The waitress, Dell, according to her pin, hovered near their booth, hands on hips. "This your kid, Han?" "No," Adrian said. The word was complicated and simple. "I found her outside." Dell's eyes flicked to the coat on the back of the seat, to the suit, to the watch on his wrist that gleamed like a small moon. She nodded once, as if closing a ledger column in her mind. "You need anything, holler. The cops patrol by here sometimes, but they got hands full tonight." When Mira settled into the corner of the booth after the first bites of bread, she hummed. He knew the tune before he knew it. Estrelita, Donde estás? The words had not passed his lips since he was 8 and a man with a guitar sat on a railing by a river, the lights of the bridge tremoring in the ribs of the water below. His mouth, without his permission, formed the next line silent. "Me pregunto que serás, who taught you that?" he asked, looking down at the steam. "Abuelito," she said. He blinked. "Your grandfather," she nodded. "But he went to heaven. Mama says the river took him back. He used to sing stars to me. He said stars keep your secrets like a mailbox." Adrian's chest went tight around an old, ugly ache, the tune unspooled in his veins. He took a breath. "Okay," he said, and put a tip under the empty whipped cream cup that would make Dell's eyebrows jump when she sheltered it in her palm. "Let's find your mom." The penthouse on the 43rd floor whispered when the lights came on, an emptiness that threw his footsteps back at him with a faint echo. He'd kept his life minimal out of aesthetic and defense: white walls, gray sofa, a glass console under the window. He told himself it was intentional. There was less for dust to settle on, less for memory to snag. Mira walked in slow, her hand tight around his. The city unfurled at her feet through the wall of glass, a map of pavement and light latticed with snow. Her mouth formed an O. "Do the windows fall?" she asked. "Only if the world does," he said, then realized that was no answer at all and added, "They're strong." She slipped out of the heavy coat and it slid to the rug. He holstered it over a chair. She stood at the glass, her breath a circle on the surface in which a smear of light turned into a comet. On the low shelf was a photograph in a simple black frame. He had turned it face down years ago. Somehow it was upright now. Perhaps the cleaning service had, with its own impersonal kindness, set it right. A small, footed pajama leg, toes peeking on the edge of a striped blanket. A mobile of paper cranes overhead, each wing caught forever mid-beat. He moved past it before the gravity could pull too hard. "Here," he said, retrieving a sweater, a pair of wool socks almost comically large on her. "You can wear these." She worked one sock over her little foot, serious as an astronaut. "What's your last name, Mira?" He tried to make his voice light. He failed, but she didn't notice. "Rivera," she said. "Mira Cardenas Rivera." She looked up, eyes finding his. "And your veil," she said it the way she had said warm, something to be tested and carefully touched. "That's right. Mama says the V looks like a bird." He had, as a boy, drawn V quotes as birds on the corners of his math paper, wings arrowing up. He imagined her mother's hand on Mira's, showing her how to make the letter fly. "Do you have a tree?" Mira asked, peering into the corners of the room. "No," he said too quickly. "I didn't get one this year." She considered this heresy. "Your house is naked," she declared. "Perhaps," he said, and found himself, with a laugh that surprised him for its own warmth, ripping a sheet of printer paper into clumsy snowflakes. Mira, with the intensity of someone knitting possibility out of thin thread, coached him. If you cut a little heart, it won't hold right. You need triangles. Triangles are the strongest. She held up a snowflake with 3 cornered holes and nodded like a foreman approving a beam. He turned away to call. Priya, he said when his assistant picked up, sounding too alert for midnight. I need to find someone. I have a name and a possible address. Sir, I found a child, he said, silence on the line. A girl, 7 maybe. Her name is Mira Cardenas Rivera. She's waiting for her mother. Last known address, she thinks, East 13th somewhere, door with frogs. Door with frogs? Priya asked, composure repairing itself around the shock. Paint it on, he said, the image arriving in his mind fully formed. It will make sense when you see it, and track the nearest churches and shelters. We need to find Raquel Rivera. You know the mother's name, he looked at Mira, who was humming. I have a guess. It's Christmas Eve. I'm aware, he said sharply, then softened. Priya, please. I'll call you, she said, and hung up with the briskness he paid her for. His phone buzzed immediately with another call. Morrison, his chief financial officer, had an uncanny sense for deviation from the schedule. Are you done with your rounds? Morrison asked, voice clipped, as if his tongue wore a tie. We need to discuss the morning feature. The network wants you on at 8. It's valuable face time. I won't be making the morning, Adrian said. We've been courting this for months, Morrison snapped. The foundation. I'm aware of what the foundation does, Adrian said, and then glanced down. Mira had found a locket on the glass console. It had slipped from the bowl where he kept keys and an old coin. She turned it in her fingers. It struck him, just a brass oval, nothing more. But when she opened it, he felt the floor tilt. Is this your star? She asked. The tiny photo inside was of a baby's foot, toes like pearls. I have to go, he told Morrison, and hung up, because if he didn't he might say the wrong thing and the wrong thing would be honest. The door on East 13th had frogs, faded green, 2 of them leaping, the paint rubbed shiny where small hands had pressed. 2 yellow eviction notices were cross-taped over them, the ink run by snow. Vale Properties. Final notice, read the top in stark capital letters. He stood under a crooked awning and felt his body go cold from the bones out. They turned the heat off a week ago, said a voice from the stoop next door. A woman pinched in rollers under a wool cap, smoking a cigarette that burned the night down. Your people, she added, looking at the sharp line of his coat. I've seen you on the bus posters. I recognized the jaw. Adrian felt the cruelty of a poster smile. She got a kid, the woman said, exhaling. Little thing, likes frogs. The girl made a Christmas tree out of receipts on the wall. Someone threw it in the trash today like it was nothing but paper. He stepped closer to the window. The glass was blistered with plastic on the inside to hold the heat that had been. In the dim, behind the ghost of himself, he could see the shape of a living room small as a breath, a couch with its stuffing showing through in crescent moons, a refrigerator speckled with magnets. He pressed his hand against the cold pane as if a warmth from him could transfer through. A super with a torqued face appeared at the hallway. Money and niceties bought entry. Inside, the apartment was a husk, the walls thin from nails and time. On the refrigerator, under a magnet in the shape of a saint with a rope girdle, a paper rectangle held crooked. He plucked it free. These were clumsy lines to read in a stranger's home. He should not. He did. Mr. Vale, it began. If this ever finds you, because I have tried and the letters come back, and I think that is how things happen, they boomerang until someone sticks their hands out to catch them. I want you to know something. My name is Raquel Rivera. My father was Elias Rivera, and yours too, I think. He used to sing me a song about a little star and told me once, when he was not drunk and the river was quiet, that he had a son named Adrian who could never forgive the way he left. I have a daughter named Mira. She likes frogs because they leap. We are okay. We are not okay. You build buildings. We lose our heat. I'm not asking you for anything but to know we exist in the same city as you. The room rocked. There was a small photograph under it, bent at the corners. A young man with a smile that dared the lens, Elias at 20, hair black as a promise, eyes bright as riverlight. Adrian's wallet held a photo he had not looked at in years of a man with a guitar on a railing. The pattern should have been expected. It still floored him. The word brother tried itself out in his mouth like something too large to swallow. He called his mother. Maeve, he said. Words found their old path even after years. Did he have? Did Elias have another family? On the other end of the line, he heard the sound of her sitting down. Ah, she said, and then said nothing, and then said, I always wondered when he'd float up again. Her name is Raquel. I saw a baby once, Maeve said, voice small with piercing time. In the bodega by the laundromat. Elias was on his best behavior that day. He was holding her like glass you could drink from. Raquel, he said. He had a ring on a necklace with a saint, St. Jude. Lost causes, she said, and tried to laugh, and it broke in the middle. Adrian closed his eyes. Estrelita. Mailboxes in the night. The half of his face he refused to look at and the half he refused to believe in had found each other on East 13th Street. He looked down at the ribbon still in his pocket from the alley, at Vale's gold letters. His company's policy, his signature miles above the details, had blown the heat out of this room and pressed paper crosses on a door painted with frogs. Are you okay? Maeve asked. Adrian. He wanted to say no because it felt true and say yes because he had been trained to. He said nothing. I'll put the kettle on, she said, as if an ocean of boiling water could fix the cold, and then she added softly, he was not better to you than to anyone. That matters and it also does not. Raquel has a daughter, he said. Mira. Mirabelle, Maeve murmured as if tasting it. As in miraculous. Come home if you want to remember what that can mean. I can't, he said. Not yet. He followed the breadcrumb trail of those who fall through the care we claim is care. A church on 40th where Father Miguel, with salt in his hair and kindness in his hands, said, She comes sometimes for the toy drive. She came this afternoon to ask if there would be a blanket left after the line. I told her to come back tomorrow. She said maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. She looked like someone who had decided to stop asking for favors. He picked up the prayer card propped by the Nativity. St. Jude again, the hopeless made possible. On the back was a memorial script. In memory of Elias Rivera, 1962-2011. The photograph was different, but the smile the same. A river that had never learned a straight path. A shelter on 27th had turned away 5 families by 8 p.m. Full up around here by noon on holidays, the woman at the desk told him with a brittle brightness like cellophane. People think we're Santa's annex. We're just trying to keep the pipes from freezing. Outside, the lines of breath from people waiting curled into a braid of winter. He returned to the penthouse with a small grocery store's worth of Impulse Mercy, cough syrup, ginger ale, a bag of mandarins. Mira stood on the sofa, leaning her forehead to the window. A snow angel she had traced with her hand melted slowly down the glass. Do you sing the Star Song? She asked without turning. Not often. Not anymore, he said. He put the bag on the counter and peeled a mandarin clean, lifting off the pith in a single lacy ring he found oddly triumphant. My father taught it to me. What was he like? Her voice was careful like a toe on a pond. Unreliable, he said before he could edit. Then, with discipline, he could make a boat out of anything. Bread, paper, a leaf. He could disappear into a crowd. He liked the river because it didn't hold on to him. My mama says water is a liar, she said. It looks level. It isn't. She ate a slice of mandarin with reverence. It tastes like the outside of Christmas, she declared, and he laughed because it was the very thing. He watched her draw, small brow furrowed, marker angled just so. She drew a square building with a frog on its door, a woman with hair like waves, a little girl with a unicorn missing an ear, and a man with an enormously detailed watch. The hands on it pointed to midnight. She had seen him on a bus stop ad. That image had weighed in her mind heavier than his voice in this room. Your watch is very loud, she said. I'll take it off, he said. He didn't sleep. He watched the city breathe. He felt the floor under him move with tides he had ignored. He had miscalculated entirely the speed at which a day could reroute a life. At 6:15, his phone vibrated. Priya. We found her, she said, no preface. Raquel Rivera was picked up at a pharmacy on 9th. She tried to take cough medicine. The clerk didn't want to press, but protocol. She passed out in the precinct. They took her to municipal. What's her condition? He was already pulling on his boots. Stable, Priya said. Then quieter, sir. There are going to be optics. He almost laughed. There's a child sleeping in my living room. I meant the good kind, she said, and he loved her for the quick correction. But you should also know, Morrison is already on the move. He called at 4, asked if I had tidied up your stray yet. He tasted something metallic. If he calls again, tell him to wait by the river. Sir. Nothing, I'm going. Do you want me to? No, he said. You should go home. Merry Christmas, Priya. You too, sir, she said, and sighed, some of the steel sliding into something like hope. Merry Christmas. Municipal Hospital at dawn has its own gravity. The corridors are long and full of fluorescent cold. He had cut ribbon after ribbon in wings he had helped fund for the name on the plaque. He had not stood inside those rooms when someone's pain had to be measured. Family only, the nurse at the station said, not unkindly but with the firmness of someone who has used this phrase like a shield for years. She's my sister, he said, his mouth astonished at its own accuracy. Then lower half. The nurse looked up. Are you the one who called 6 times this morning and twice last night? Yes, I recognized the voice. A beat, then empathy softened her jaw. I'll get you 5 minutes. Let her rest. Don't rattle the cage. Raquel lay under a thin blanket. She was younger than he'd imagined, but hunger makes the young look old in strange places around the eyes, at the mouth. Her hair was dark, track curled where she'd plaited it and let it out. There was a bruise on her forearm like an unmoored moon. He could see his father in her when she turned her head, the insistence in the set of her chin. He approached with care. She woke like someone used to waking in strange rooms all at once, ready to fight. I don't want your pity, she said immediately before he could tell her who he was. Her voice was raw but steady. I want my daughter. She's safe, he said, hands up, words like offerings. With me, warm. Her eyes cut to the edges of his coat, to the watch he had put back on like armor. She saw him. The bus stop ad. The perfect teeth. The name on the paper cross on her door. You, she said. It wasn't a greeting. It was a verdict. I didn't know, he said. He had said those words many times in many rooms. They had never crumbled in his mouth like this, chalk and salt. I didn't know you were my. Don't you dare say sister, she snapped. Don't you dare use that now, he swallowed. Raquel, he said. I'm Adrian. It fell between them. Elias was my father, her eyes flicked. Something in them jerked like a bird startled into flight. He said he had a son with expensive shoes. He laughed when he said it. He was not a nice man when he laughed like that. He left us like he left you, she went on, daring him to contest it. He was a flood that misread the map. But he could sing a star right down into your palm. Yes, he said softly. I wrote to you, she said. I wrote to you and the letters came back. Your name sits on top of my door like a knife. You like your gold letters, Mr. Vale. I smell them in the hall. He felt his spine stiffen for the defense without his permission, old reflexes rising. He quashed them hard. I found one of your letters, he said. It was on your fridge. I should have found the rest. Should have is warm like summer, she said. It doesn't help in the night. Mira thought the bags were warm, he said helplessly. She squeezed her eyes shut. If I could rip every ribbon and tie them together to make a rope to pull us out of this, I would, she said. She opened her eyes, defiance and sorrow soldered together. Where is my daughter? It was the right question. I can bring her, he said. Now. She seemed to bite the inside of her cheek, then nodded. But understand me, she said. If you think this is charity, if you think you get to make a show of us to clean your plate, you don't. Don't make us your story. We are not your props. It hit like a slap. He deserved worse. I understand, he said. Do you? She asked. No, he said, but I'm learning. She looked at him for the first time as if he were a person and not a machine. She nodded once. Hurry, he brought Mira. The reunion was 1,000 tiny movements. The way Raquel reached up with both hands and then pulled the girl down to her. How Mira tucked her head into the hollow under her mother's jaw, a place that fit like it had been carved. The way they cried without sound, like two parts of the same instrument finding the note back. The unicorn, cradled between them, kept watch. You came back, Mira breathed into her mother's neck. I told you the bells, Raquel said, her hand on the back of Mira's head like prayer. 1, 2, 3, I told you I would find you. It took me longer. Are we going home? Mira asked, a question dredged through hope and fear. We will, Raquel said. We will find another home, not here. She looked up at Adrian. Not under your letters. He had always thought of consequences as things that followed after decisions like a shadow follows a man. He had never imagined a little girl on a pile of trash as the radius of his own shadow's reach. He felt foolish. A king who discovered his throne was a folding chair. When he stepped into the hallway, Morrison was there in a dark coat, hair slicked into apology. He moved like a man who thought he could negotiate the weather. You can't do this, Morrison said without preamble. You can't take a stray up to your penthouse in a city of cameras and expect me to mop it up. We have a message to control. We have a brand. You're fired, Adrian said. He didn't raise his voice. He did not enjoy it for the first time in his life. It felt like moving a stone from a river's path that had been placed there a decade before. The water would argue. It would also find its way. Morrison gaped. You have a board. Let them have me, Adrian said. I'm tired of being the board's good face. Buy yourself another jaw. You'll destroy the company, Morrison hissed. I'll destroy the part of it that eats children, Adrian said. There was a silence after that. It felt like the first clean breath after choking. He went to his mother's because she had put the kettle on and because his hands had started to shake. Maeve hugged him with the kind of hug that writes itself back into the body's story, the one you don't forget even if you've sold your soul. She made him tea, and he didn't drink it so much as hold it and steam his face. He had a medallion, he said. San Judas. He put his hand to his chest without meaning to. Does that? Maeve pulled a small box from a cabinet. He left this on my stoop the last time I saw him, she said, and lifted out a thin chain with a saint's face rubbed smooth. I threw it out the door at him. I wanted him to feel what it was like to have things in your hands and lose them. They laughed at that, both of them startled, and then quieted. He slipped the medallion into his pocket. It was a heavy story for such a small piece of metal. He drove back through the mid-morning snow that fell as if serious about burying the city and found that it could not. In his office, he typed a statement. It did not sound like him. It sounded like the person he had wanted to be before he learned what a quarterly goal tastes like. I found a child last night. Her name is Mira. She slept on a pile of trash bags in an alley behind a bakery while our foundation Gaylor ribbons lay tangled at her feet. This is not a story about a savior. This is a story about a man who helped make decisions that led to a mother and child losing their heat in December. This is a story about how policy has a heartbeat. Mine was too slow to notice. It will not be again. Effective immediately, he wrote, a halt to all winter evictions across our properties. Not paused until the PR storm passes. Halted until we rewrite the rules. Transfer of the East 13th building into a community land trust. Funds redirected from the winter gala to emergency heat funds. A review of all supply chain and property decisions by a citizen council. Half of my shares to a trust named for two people I owed more than I gave, Hannah and Rackwell. He would step back as CEO. He would not step away. He sent it and then waited for the blow. The board called, of course. They seethed. The words irresponsible, erratic, sentimental came across the line like hail. He listened. He said, I accept your decision before they could make it. He hung up, the phone in his hand suddenly smaller. He went back to the hospital with a paper bag of mandarins and a notebook. Rackwell watched him like a hawk might watch a thing that dares to call itself a helper. He did not ask for her forgiveness. He asked for her rules. You want to help, she said finally. Let other people talk. Sit in our rooms and listen. Give money without names on it. Don't turn us into Christmas ornaments. Okay, he said. You're my brother, she said then, as if the word had aged enough in the cave of her mouth to be true, and she half laughed at the absurdity. You got the wrong end of his smile. So did you, he said. She let him hold out the medallion. She touched it like you touch a childhood bench as you pass it on the street 30 years later and realize it is still there. St. Jude, she said. We are a lost cause, aren't we? Not today, he said. That night, because the body is faster than civic architecture, a home was found. A real one, through a network that had always existed beneath the golden net he had hung over the world and told himself was safety. A woman at the church gave up her spare room for a month. The Community Land Trust drew up expedited paperwork. A neighbor salvaged the receipt star from a bag and flattened it under a book so it could rise again. Mira carried the unicorn like an ambassador from the land of the alley to the land of the living room. In the new room, there was a mirror shaped like a flower. She stood before it and tilted her head, practicing a smile that did not require bracing. On Christmas morning, Adrian walked up 3 flights of stairs with a brown paper bag of groceries and 2 lengths of garland someone had thrown away behind a salon and he had rescued because Mira liked to make things out of anything. Snow had bent every branch in the city into a bow. The air held its breath. He knocked and waited, and the door opened, and there they were, Rackwell in a sweater that had seen winters before and would see them after, hair clean and damp from a quick wash, eyes still skeptical but less armed, Mira bouncing on the balls of her feet, socks sliding, body of brightness it had not been in that alley. "Can we make orange snow?" Mira asked, holding up a mandarin. "Like if we throw it, will it stick?" "Let's test your hypothesis," he said gravely. "Science demands it." They bundled and threw mandarin slices off the fire escape, which did not stick. They burst open on the snow and stained it with suns. Mira laughed like something in her had unknotted. Inside, they strung garland and tape held paper snowflakes to the ceiling. The receipt star got a place of honor over the window. Rackwell cooked rice and beans and an egg with a runny yolk. He added Irish stew his mother had insisted he bring, an odd marriage that tasted, somehow, right. In that room, the river of their histories sat down and ate beside them without flooding the floor. After, while Mira constructed a frog out of mandarin peels and was delighted by her own wit, Rackwell and Adrian sat on the little couch, shoulders not touching but close enough. "I don't forgive you," Rackwell said quietly. "You haven't asked me to, but forgiveness is not a coupon. You don't redeem it for services rendered. You keep showing up. You look me in the face when it's not Christmas." "I will," he said. He had, for years, promised the wrong things to the wrong people. This one felt like a covenant that could be kept. Mira climbed into his lap without asking permission or apology. Children understand ownership of their own comfort in a way adults forget. She pressed a mandarin slice against his lips, the sacrament. "Sing," she said. "The star one." He looked at Rackwell. She nodded, tiredly regal, granting a small pardon. He sang. His voice was not beautiful. It was true. Estrelita, Don de Stas. The song raveled out into the room, caught on the receipt star, threaded through the garland, slid into the cracks in the window and out into a city that needed it. He could feel for a moment his father's laugh when it was nice, a piece of it, like a coin in his pocket he had forgotten he had. He could feel his mother's kettle's steam. He could feel a mobile's paper wings quiver in a room that no longer existed. He could feel a trash bag give off small heat to a brave child sleeping in its shadow, and he could feel the shame of that, and he could feel it turning into something that would make tomorrow different from yesterday. When the song ended, Mira looked up and whispered, "Mail it," as if she had just dropped a letter in the slot of a star. He kissed the top of her head. The medallion in his pocket pressed into his thigh like a reminder you carry not because you need to, but because you must. The city went on being a city. It does not stop for anyone's epiphany. The board filed motions. The press called things redemption. Morrison made threats that turned into whispers. The foundation employees cried when money was moved from the event to the heaters. A family 2 floors down knocked to see if there was extra stew and were welcomed in. A receipt star held a window's left corner open when the heat fogged it up. The river kept lying and telling the truth, level from a distance, rippled up close. There were still children sleeping on trash bags in places he had not walked yet. He would walk there. At dusk, he stepped into the hall to leave and then returned, awkward. He held out his hand. Rackwell looked, baffled, then shook it. Somewhere in another life, where he had stood between a podium and a camera and taken a network's glow onto his face, this small handshake would have felt insufficient. In this life, it felt exactly right. "Are we your family now?" Mira asked, looking back over her shoulder, one hand on the door, unicorn bumping her knee. "Yes," he said, "if you will have me." She considered, then said, "We'll try." The door shut. He stood in a hallway with peeling paint and laughed until he doubled over, something like grief and something like awe mingling in the sound. He pressed his back to the wall. A small child down the hall cried and then quieted. A radio somewhere played a carol off key. The world did not right itself. It tilted toward better. Out on the street, a ribbon of blue and gold swept along the curb, tangled around a tire. A bus rolled over it and it snapped and fluttered and then lay still. He bent and picked it up and tied it into a knot in his hand. The gold letters crumpled. He put it in his pocket with the medallion. He would untie knots slowly now. She had slept on trash on Christmas Eve, and he had frozen before he could name why. The truth had cracked open his ribs and let air back in. It would have been easy to believe he was the hero. It was harder and better to keep standing in rooms he had once fled, and to understand that the story had never been about him. He lifted his face to the snowfall, and for a moment, the flakes arranged themselves into the shape of a V. A bird lifting. Above him, a star, a billion miles away, carried a child's letter the only way stars carry anything, as light. He walked home in that light, the city under his feet, the river to his right, the truth behind him pushing, in front of him pulling, and a little girl's sleepy head living warm now in his memory. Not because she made him a better man, but because she made him a truer one.